Good evening, dear viewers, to the shadows of another night. I am Elias Nocturne, keeper of the unholy chronicles and guardian of tales that dare not speak their names in daylight. Tonight's account was discovered among the personal effects of a once respected Cambridge spiritualist, written in a hand that grew increasingly frantic with each page. It speaks of Professor Basileus's machine, a device that sought to map not the heavens above, but the very pathways of the dead themselves. I must warn you, this account has been known to attract attention from realms beyond our own. Those of a sensitive disposition may wish to ensure their doors are locked and their mirrors covered. For the rest of you, draw closer to the candlelight and listen well to the tale of how the Dead Zodiac came to be. The clockwork mechanisms whispered in the darkness, their rhythm matching the pulse of the dying. I record these events with shaking hands, for what I witnessed in Professor Basileus's laboratory that bitter winter of 1866 has marked my soul with an indelible stain. Perhaps by committing this account to paper, I might exorcise some portion of my guilt, though I hold no illusion that any reader will believe the horrors I'm about to relate. I was a young spiritualist then, fresh from studies at Cambridge, where I'd developed new methods of communicating with the departed. The invitation to assist the reclusive Professor Basileus in his private séance chamber seemed providence itself. How naive I was. How tragically, irreversibly naive. The professor's estate loomed over the Yorkshire moors, a Victorian monument of black stone and rusted iron. Even now, I recall how the winter winds keened through its corridors that first evening, carrying whispers that I would later recognize as warnings from the dead themselves. "You see, Mr. Harrison," the professor had said, his gaunt face flickering in candlelight as we sat in his study, "conventional mediums concern themselves with individual spirits. My work, my life's work, seeks to map the very architecture of death itself." I remember how I laughed then, uncertain and afraid. The professor's expression remained grave, his dark eyes burning with zealous intensity behind thick spectacles. "The ancients understood," he continued, sliding a leather-bound tome across his desk. "The zodiac we know is merely a reflection of a greater truth. 12 gates through which the dead must pass, Mr. Harrison. 12 constellations that mark the boundaries between life and death." The book contained star charts unlike any I'd encountered. Each zodiac symbol was accompanied by intricate diagrams of spirit paths, showing how souls moved between our world and the next. Aries became the ram of sacrifice, Taurus the bull of final judgment, Gemini the twins divided by death's veil. "These patterns," Basileus explained in a whisper, "are visible only to those who have walked the threshold between worlds. The nearly drowned, those rescued from grave illness, the survivors of mortal wounds. They see these spiritual pathways, though most blind themselves to the truth. I should have fled that very night. Instead, I stayed, drawn deeper into the professor's obsession. We spent countless hours in his séance chamber, surrounded not by simple candles and crystal balls, but by machinery that merged science with spiritualism. The centerpiece was his masterwork, the machine. It dominated the circular chamber, a towering construct of brass and mirrors, designed to amplify and channel spirit energy. Curved arms bearing crystal pendulums rotated slowly around a central viewing chamber, tracking the movement of souls through the celestial spheres. "Tonight," Basileus declared one December evening, "we make history. The machine will not merely contact the dead, it will map their journey through the zodiac gates, allowing us to chart the very geography of the afterlife." The air grew heavy with ethereal energy as he activated the device. Gears turned, crystals chimed, and the veil between worlds grew thin. Through the machine's viewing portal, each gate manifested with its own distinct sensory assault upon my mortal faculties. The very air seemed to thicken with the essence of death, carrying different odors and sensations for each celestial doorway. Ares, the ram of sacrifice, announced itself with the metallic tang of fresh blood and burning incense. The air grew thick with sacred smoke, choking my lungs with the combined funeral incense of 1,000 cultures. Through its twisted horns came the ritually slain, their throats bearing the marks of ceremonial daggers. The spirit's procession brought waves of temperature changes, burning heat from self-immolators, the icy chill of those exposed to the elements, the lingering warmth of poison. Their ethereal wounds leaked essence that formed patterns in the air, writing sacrificial verses in languages long forgotten. Their wounds produced sounds, the whispered prayers of their final moments, the sharp intake of breath before the sacrificial blade fell, the soft sighs of those who gave their lives willingly. The ram's horns seemed to vibrate at a frequency that made my teeth ache and my bones shiver in sympathy. Taurus, the bull of final judgment, filled the air with the weight of centuries of guilt. Through its gate came the condemned, dragging chains forged from their earthly sins. The chains dragged across unseen floors with a cacophony of distinct sounds. Gold chains clinked like coins, murderers' chains dragged with a wet, meaty scrape, oath-breakers' bonds whistled with the wind of broken promises. The bull's presence brought the smell of tarnished metal and old leather, like ancient law books crumbling to dust. Each judgment sent vibrations through the ground beneath my feet, and I could taste bitter metal on my tongue, as though I were drinking liquid justice itself. Merchants who had cheated the poor wore chains of tarnished gold, murderers dragged weapons forever fused to their ghostly hands, and oath-breakers' tongues had transformed into serpents that whispered their betrayals eternally. Gemini, the twins divided, created an atmosphere split down the middle, one side warm with love, the other cold with loss. Through this gate came lovers separated by death, reaching eternally for each other across an impossible void. The space between them produced a keening sound just beneath human hearing, felt more in the hollow of one's chest than heard with ears. The air shimmered with visible grief, refracting light like heat waves rising from summer stones. I caught the ghost of scents, a mother's perfume that her infant would never smell again, the tobacco smoke of a father's pipe, the fresh-baked bread of a wife's kitchen. I saw a mother trying to touch her infant's cheek, their fingers forever inches apart. Brothers who died decades apart circled each other like binary stars, never quite reuniting. Most terrible were the suicides who had hoped to join their deceased beloveds, only to find themselves trapped in this eternal separation. The endless near misses of almost touching spirits created static electricity that made my hair stand on end. Cancer, the cradle of ghosts, brought the overwhelming sweetness of funeral flowers mixed with the powder-fresh scent of nurseries. Here dwelt the spirits of children, but these were not the innocent shades one might expect. These were the vengeful dead, infants who never drew breath, children claimed by plague and persecution, young ones murdered by those who should have protected them. Their spectral toys created a twisted symphony. Burial shroud dolls whispered lullabies in dead languages. Grave dirt balls thudded with the weight of collapsed earth. Funeral flower skipping ropes swished through the air with the sound of mourners' feet shuffling through cemetery grass. The temperature fluctuated between fever hot and morgue cold, matching the children's shifts between playfulness and vengeance. Their laughter echoed as if through long hospital corridors, mixed with the ticking of two short life clocks. Leo, the lion of pride's price, radiated heat like a funeral pyre. Through this gate came those who had placed themselves above others in life. The crowned spirits' burning diadems filled the air with the stench of scorched flesh and melting metal, while phantom gold clinked and shifted within transparent forms like stones in a burial urn. Noble spirits still wearing phantom crowns found those symbols of power now burned their ethereal flesh. Wealthy merchants who had hoarded their gold now carried it within their transparent forms, weighing them down for eternity. Military leaders who had sacrificed soldiers for glory now led parades of their fallen men, forced to look into each dead face for all time. The lion's roar contained the dying screams of battlefield soldiers, and the endless parade of fallen men marched with the rhythmic precision of military drums. I could taste ash on my tongue, the ashes of burned proclamations, destroyed empires, and cremated glory. Virgo, the virgin of buried secrets, exuded the musty odour of sealed crypts and mouldering documents. Through her gate came spirits still clutching documents to their chest, their forms wrapped in webs of lies and deception. The webs were visible as gossamer strands that caught the light like morning dew on a spider's web, each droplet containing a hidden truth. The spirits' confessions wrote themselves in illuminated script that burned the eyes to read, accompanied by the endless whisper of paper-dry voices trying to speak long-held secrets. I watched as hidden crimes wrote themselves across spectral skin, as forgotten treaties burned themselves into ectoplasmic flesh. Most disturbing were those who had buried truths so deep that their ghostly forms had become living ciphers, endlessly trying to confess what they could no longer remember. The temperature dropped to the chill of underground vaults, and the air felt thick with the dust of disturbed archives. Libra, the scales of spiritual debt, brought the clean, sharp scent of new-minted coins mixed with the copper tang of blood. Unlike earthly justice, these scales measured not only actions but intentions, not only sins but their rippling consequences through time. Each weighing of a soul produced a tone, like crystal glasses filled to different levels, creating an ethereal symphony of judgment. The scales themselves moved with the quiet precision of a mortician's tools, and I could feel the weight of judgment pressing down on my own shoulders. I observed as spirits were balanced against their impact on the world. Philanthropists who had donated for fame rather than charity found their good works wanting, while humble acts of unknown kindness tipped the scales toward mercy. The truly damning revelation was watching how a single act of cruelty could outweigh a lifetime of superficial virtue. The air crackled with moral energy, tasting of ozone and tears. Scorpio, the scorpion of perpetual punishment, filled the chamber with the acrid smell of venom and regret. Unlike hell's general torture, these punishments were exquisitely personal. Each unique punishment created its own sensory experience. The gossip's scorpion tongue nest buzzed with the angry drone of 1,000 stinging truths, while the frozen abandoner's presence brought waves of bitter cold that burned like dry ice. I witnessed a gossip whose tongue had become a nest of scorpions, each one whispering back every rumor she had ever spread. A man who had abandoned his family to winter's cold was eternally frozen, able to see but never reach the warmth of reconciliation. A judge who had accepted bribes was repeatedly stung by scorpions made of the very coins he had taken, each sting bringing total recall of the innocent lives he had ruined. The sting of corrupted coins made a sound like mercury dropping on marble, and the air felt thick with the weight of deserved suffering. I could taste metal and poison on my tongue, different for each spirit's specific doom. Sagittarius, the archer of final memory, loosed arrows that sang through the air with the sound of rushing time. Each arrow brought not physical pain, but the absolute truth of one's existence. Each impact brought not just visions but complete sensory memories, the touch of loved ones' hands, the smell of significant moments, the taste of important meals, the sound of crucial conversations. I watched as spirits relived every moment they had affected another's life, feeling both their own emotions and those of everyone they had ever touched. Some arrows revealed paths not taken, choices that could have changed not only their fate, but those of countless others. The kindest spirits glowed with the light of lives well lived, while the cruel collapsed under the weight of their impact on others. The air itself became a lens, bending light around the spirits as they relived their lives. The scent of time's passage, like dust, old books, and fading flowers, filled my lungs with each breath. Capricorn, the goat of eternal climbing, manifested with the smell of high mountain air and the metallic taste of determination. Here spirits faced an endless mountain that they were compelled to ascend. Each handhold was fashioned from their life's decisions, each foothold carved from consequences. Each grip made sounds according to its nature, the solid thunk of good decisions, the crumbling scatter of poor choices. Those who had built their success on others' misfortune found their handholds crumbling, sending them tumbling back to begin again. Those who had helped others up in life found spirit hands reaching down to assist their climb. Yet none ever reached the summit. The climbing itself was both punishment and purpose. The spirit's endless climbing created a rhythm like a heartbeat against stone, while those who fell screamed with voices that Dopplered away into the void. The temperature dropped with spiritual altitude, and the air grew thin with symbolic height. Aquarius, the water-bearer of collective memory, brought the sound of countless rivers merging into one great flow of experience. Here, I witnessed how individual souls dissolved into the greater flow of human history. The air grew heavy with moisture, each droplet containing fragments of memory that could be tasted on the tongue, the salt of soldiers' tears, the sweet wine of mothers' joy, the bitter herbs of artists' struggles. A stream of soldiers from every war flowed together, their individual conflicts merging into one eternal understanding of battle's cost. Rivers of mothers across time combined their joy and grief into currents of universal parenthood. Most fascinating were the tributaries of artists and inventors, their creative energies swirling together into whirlpools of inspiration that sometimes splashed into the world of the living. The merging streams created overlapping harmonies of human experience, while the inspirational whirlpools released bursts of creative energy that made my skin tingle with potential. Finally, Pisces, the fish of eternal return, filled the space with the sound of deep ocean currents and amniotic fluids. Two great fish circled each other, one consuming spirits ready to return to life, the other birthing them into new existence. The great fish moved through spiritual water that felt thick as time itself, their passage leaving trails of memory foam in the air that dissolved with the taste of forgotten dreams. But this was not the peaceful process spiritualists had imagined. I watched in horror as spirits were stripped of memory, their very essence compressed and transformed. The compression of souls created a high-pitched keening that vibrated through my teeth, while the space between death and rebirth hummed with undefined potential. Some fought against the current, desperate to retain some fragment of their past existence. Others went willingly into oblivion, eager to escape the weight of their accumulated experiences. Most disturbing were those caught between the fish, neither fully dead nor ready for rebirth, existing in a state of perpetual transition. The spirits caught between the fish exuded a miasma of confusion that made my head spin with dysphoric uncertainty. But worse was yet to come. As the machine's power reached its peak, the spirits began to recognize our observation. The dead do not take kindly to the living witnessing their sacred passages. They turned their attention to our mortal realm, and in their anger they sought revenge. The temperature plunged below freezing. Frost crept across windows and mirrors, and through the machine's viewing portal they came, not one or two spirits, but legions. The angry dead, outraged at our presumption, poured through the Zodiac gates. What followed exists in my memory as fragments of pure terror. the professor's triumphant laughter becoming screams of agony, the machine's crystals shattering as spirits forced their way through, the smell of grave dirt and decay, and voices, countless voices, speaking in the languages of the long dead. I fled the chamber, but not before witnessing Professor Basileus's fate. The spirits needed an anchor in our world, a living vessel to serve as keeper of their zodiac gates. His body contorted as 12 powerful spirits, the original zodiac guardians themselves, took possession. When last I saw him, his flesh was marked with death signs, and his eyes burned with the knowledge of 12 realms of the dead. I sealed the séance chamber with every ward and blessing I knew. I destroyed the professor's notes and diagrams, save for one journal I kept as evidence. But I fear it wasn't enough. Every night since then, I've sensed the dead watching, waiting. The zodiac gates remain open, and somewhere out there, the thing that was once Professor Basileus maintains his machine, guiding souls through their celestial passages. Sometimes in darkest night, I hear the whispering of spirits, speaking of zodiac gates and judgment. The barrier between life and death grows weaker, and more people begin to sense it. Mediums report stronger manifestations. Asylums fill with patients who speak of zodiac signs, bleeding together with funeral rites. I share this account as both warning and confession. If you value your soul's peace, do not seek the zodiac gates. Do not trust spirits who speak of celestial passages. And if you ever hear clockwork turning in darkness while voices whisper of judgment, run. Run before the dead claim you as their own. For those brave or damned souls who wish to learn more of what I've witnessed, I've hidden the professor's journal, where I pray it will never be found. But in my heart, I know it will surface. Such dangerous knowledge has a way of reaching those who seek it. Good evening, dear viewers, to the shadows of another night. I am Elias Nocturne, keeper of the unholy chronicles and guardian of tales that dare not speak their names in daylight. Tonight's account was discovered among the personal effects of a once respected Cambridge spiritualist, written in a hand that grew increasingly frantic with each page. It speaks of Professor Basileus's machine, a device that sought to map not the heavens above, but the very pathways of the dead themselves. I must warn you, this account has been known to attract attention from realms beyond our own. Those of a sensitive disposition may wish to ensure their doors are locked and their mirrors covered. For the rest of you, draw closer to the candlelight and listen well to the tale of how the Dead Zodiac came to be.